Been a long road to follow, been there and gone tomorrow, without saying goodbye to yesterday. All the memories I hold still valid. Oh, half the tears deluded them. Maybe this time tomorrow the rain will cease to follow, and the mist will fade into a mood today. Something somewhere out there keeps going. Am I going home? Will I hear someone singing songs to the silent moon?
I feel inclined to address something today. It's been about 2 years that I've been an outed atheist. And in that time, I've encountered a lot of troubles that I've never had before in my life. Now, I've slid 3/4 of the way across the theistic spectrum. And time again, I'm asked to explain what is the theistic spectrum and what does it mean. There are 4 parts to this philosophy. First off, and maybe most common of them, is Gnostic theism. Gnostic theism is the belief that there is a God, and you yourself possess some special knowledge of his name and his nature, if he is the correct term. Second off, there is agnostic theism, also sometimes referred to as deism. You believe that there is a God, but you do not claim to possess any knowledge of what God is, where it comes from, or what its desires are. Third off, you have agnostic atheism, which is you don't know if there's a God or not, and you have chosen to claim no knowledge of this entity either, until more information has become made aware to you, or some form of evidence that you can latch onto convinces you that this thing exists. Finally, there is Gnostic atheism. Gnostic atheism is you believe there is no God, and you believe that you have proof that no God currently exists or ever has existed in the past. What people commonly come at me with at this point when I try explaining to them what this is a statement of they believe that I believe in nothing. That is not part of the theistic spectrum. That is a separate philosophy which is referred to as solipsism. Now, the way that solipsism is phrased, for simplicity's sake, I guess, is that nothing in the world can you be certain exist. The only thing that you know is real is yourself. Anything else can be simply a hallucination, which there's no comeback to that. Solipsism is, in my opinion at least, a fairly useless philosophy, but still one that for some reason comes up here and there. Now, I mentioned that I've slid 3/4 of the way across the spectrum. Let me explain this in a little bit more detail. I was born to a Catholic family. That's Gnostic theism. I was then baptized into Lutheranism, or as a Lutheran, I guess is the more appropriate way to say that. still Gnostic theism. I converted to Mormonism during my years studying philosophy, which actually led me into polytheism. I am now up to agnostic theism. I started to find at that point in time that the different gods that I've encountered throughout my studies have been largely indistinguishable from one another. And so I was really confused for a really long time. And people started to kind of question if I was a Satanist, which is kind of weird, but I guess not inappropriate. And it didn't take long from there before I started to really question anything as far as gods are concerned. I didn't yet understand fully what the word atheism meant or what the word Gnostic meant. What I knew for certain is that the God that I had been raised to believe in, or gods, as in retrospect, there's kind of 4 different versions of God in the Hebrew canon alone. I'll digress from that point though. But something was wrong with my God. The way that he was fed to me, the way he was described to me, and the way he behaved were things I simply couldn't understand. It wasn't until another 2, maybe 3 years after that, and, at a point in time where I had easy access to the internet, I started coming across philosophers that had jumped ship, just like I had. I came across such personalities as Matt Doolahunty, T.J. Curtis, Russell Glasser, and, slightly more down to earth than these guys. I then started to take up a more naturalistic view of the world, and was exposed to personalities like Neil deGrasse Tyson, Penn Jillette, I'm sorry, I just lost the name. James Randi, thank you, and Bill Nye. I'm now exposed to a world where naturalism exists, where humanism exists, and I'm able to expand my horizons. And I now have access to tools of skepticism, which I didn't have access to for a long time. I was, as most people who are indoctrinated are, pushed in a position where you just have to accept what people tell you is true. You don't have the tools yourself to examine the claims and see if they really make any sense to you. Now, I've been told by a handful of people that I work with that God is invisible. God exists outside of the natural world. You can't expect to be able to call upon God and have Him explain things to you, despite the idea that the Book of Doctrine and Covenants actually possesses a magical spell that's supposed to summon God and allow you to see Him and speak with Him directly. By the way, I tried it. It didn't work for me. Maybe I had the wrong flavor incense or something. I don't know. So, that puts God firmly in the presence of what's referred to in the scientific community as dark matter. Dark matter is a mathematical formula wherein you are able to detect invisible things by measuring the objects around them, the way they're moving, and whether or not that is in line with or in contradiction to the expected way that these objects around the invisible object should behave. This is only the beginning of my grievances, actually. If I may take up your time, the person who told me that God is dark matter, and meant that as something completely different, I'm sure, than the scientific definition of the word dark matter, also told me that one of the reasons why lots of people turn to atheism, average of 2% of us across the United States, is because there are no contemporary volumes that describe God in any way that people would accept. Well, we actually do possess contemporary understanding of aliens, and most people still don't believe you if you say that you're abducted. But okay, please proceed with your point. Do you possess a contemporary album that describes God and his weens and mays? Yes, he says. I have this book. I don't actually have a copy of it, so sorry. Entitled Covenant with America. Okay, go on. Well, in the book of Isaac, it describes... Fuck, which book was... It was Deuteronomy, actually? The book of Deuteronomy describes these 12 sons of this prophet who were supposed to have 1,000 children each, but they all disappear at some point, with the exception of 2 who become the sons of Israel. I'm familiar with this story. I stumbled across it when I was in my theistic studies. Where this is going is that Israel's 12 sons went to different corners of the earth, and when they all show up side by side, then that's supposed to be the last minor prophecy before the major prophecies of St. John. Go on with your story anyway, I guess. So America is this blessed place that was discovered by the Jews. No, I don't think it was. If I remember what I heard correctly, the first inhabitants of America were actually the Chinese, or descended from the Chinese more appropriately, back during Pangean times, when there was only a lake dividing Florida from Eurasia, and that was only a few miles to walk if you wanted to try walking around the perimeter of that lake to get to the other continent. But, this is before biblical times even were a thing, so I guess whatever on that point. It was then rediscovered fucking several millennia later by the Scandinavians, who died here due to extreme weather. Then by the Spaniards, and then by the English, who claimed America for themselves and decided they wanted to kick everybody else who lived on this island off of it. I claim this island in the name of England. You can't claim this island. We were born here. There's 4.8 million of us. Do you have a flag? No, I don't need a flag. No flag, no country. These are my rules. I just made them up, and I'm backing them up with this gun I have on loan from the NRA. Okay. So, America is now one of the tribes of Israel, and Gorge Washinton was their prophet. Gorge Washinton conducted several miracles using his fine magical powers, He created a fog bank to turn himself invisible. He went 40 days and 40 nights without eating anything but shoe leather. And he sunk a dozen French battleships by conjuring a typhoon just off of the coast of New York. I don't believe any of that. Oh yeah, and George Washington was also indestructible. He was shot 20 times as he rode a horse across a battlefield with both sides shooting at him. So I guess that George Washington was also in the movie The Patriot, The Messenger, Braveheart, because, same thing happened in all those places. So his coat had a dozen holes in it where he had been shot, but he never bled. The problem with contemporary texts is that they need to be independently verifiable. If I had been George Washington and I wanted to, draw myself up as a prophet, and I wanted to use one of my miracles as me being indestructible, I would take a jacket, put it on a mannequin, shoot my mannequin a dozen times, and then put on my coat and say, "Look, I'm not bleeding despite having been shot 12 times." Conjuring a fog bank. I'm pretty sure that meteorology kind of, sort of existed before the Weather Channel, and you don't need to have magical powers to predict when a fog bank is going to appear. And, if you're going to hide in that fog bank in order to get away from enemy territory, you don't need to be able to walk very fast. Fog kind of moves at only a slightly above brisk pace, if at all. Sinking French battleships by summoning a typhoon. I don't know what to say about that. Did no ships that weren't French get sunk that year? These aren't miracles, these are mathematical unlikelihoods, maybe? Or they're not even that unlikely, and these things could happen. Maybe he was shot at. Maybe his coat did have a dozen bullet holes in it. Maybe he was riding on horseback, moving at, 35 miles per hour, running away from men who were carrying muskets that fired bullets at only slightly higher velocities than I can throw a knife, and his coat's fluttering in the wind and it's catching rocks being kicked up by his horse. Anyway, I'm just kind of getting mad at this point. I haven't taken my medicine yet. By the way, this is a vlog for February 22nd, 2015. Thank you very much. My name is Dustin Fader. I'm the author of the book Red Twilight. Have a good day.